Hi viewers, welcome back to my channel. This lecture is going to be the third one of the series English Usage with special focus on writing and formal speaking. This is intended for the users of English as a second language, as we have already shared in the previous two lectures. Now to begin with, I would like to share some general remarks. Due to some personal engagements recently, I have not been able to record and publish lectures frequently in this series, but I assure you that this will not be the case in the near future, and I would like to share and publish the lectures more frequently. To connect this lecture with the previous one, let's try to remember what we were studying in the last lecture. We had started a very important topic titled Subject-verb agreement, and I told you why it was so important. I told you that this was the area in which users of English as a second language, users of ESL, make most mistakes. Also, remember that we termed that lecture the S mischief. We studied that the addition of S with the verb makes the verb singular, but the same addition with the noun make them plural. But later on, we studied that the S ending with the noun may not necessarily signal the insertion of plural verbs, because that S may not be the plural S, but may be inbuilt with that word. For example, measles, rickets, mathematics. These words do not take S as pluralized inflection. Now look at the screen closely. There is a topic, subject hidden behind the curtain. It is again another point that falls under the same head, subject-verb agreement. We are not going to start another topic. This is just a point that will be added to the same topic, subject-verb agreement. And this point is also very important because subjects will be covered by some other syntactic components, some other structures that are close to the verb. And as users of English as a second language, we are inclined to think that verb always agrees with the nearest component. But this is not always so in English language. And now this also takes us back to the point that we discussed in the introductory lecture, that sense is more important than structure. Apparently, you might think that some component of syntactic structure, the structure that is present before us, may dictate that it should take its own verb. But the sense dictates otherwise. We shall look very closely at these points in the upcoming examples. Again, revised points, subject hidden behind the curtain. Subject will not be as close to the verb as it should be or as it otherwise is. Look at the first two examples. One of the most important reasons of failure are fear. Now it seems that the sentence is correct because when we speak out the sentence fluently, it seems that reasons of failure are fear. But a close inspection of the structure reveals something that is different. And what is that revelation? What is that knowledge? We shall look at it later on. Second sentence is wheels on the bus goes round and round. This is a very famous rhyme that is very popular among young children. This sentence may be correct, may be incorrect. You may pause the video, look it more closely, and concentrate on it and decide whether it is correct or incorrect. Sentence 3 is a man who digs a pit for others fall into it himself. Again, the sentence may be correct or incorrect. Fourth sentence is many of the prisoners are complaining about inhuman treatment. Again, the same is the case with this sentence, correct or incorrect. Look at the next sentence now. Next sentence is Sir Richard Colley, a baronet, alderman, and many other things, was pleased when he read the letter from his son living at a boarding school. Is it correct or incorrect? Decide about it. Pause the video, read it again and again if you feel like it, and decide whether it is correct or incorrect. The space program that underwent an unexpected break due to red tape and other bureaucratic measures is now being relaunched with a renewed spirit. Read it again as many times as you feel need to do so and decide its grammatical acceptability and correctness. A person whose job involves calculating insurance risks and payments for insurance companies by studying how frequently fires, accidents, deaths, etc. happen are called an actuary. The financial problems which some of the companies possessive is there, have been facing over the last year are mainly due to increased foreign competition. People in every country of the European Union like to be individualists rather than collectivists. Now these sentences are meant to inculcate a very important concept. What was that concept? The concept was subjects are sometimes hidden behind the curtain and they must be brought forward in order to agree with the verb that is present in our sentence. You have read the sentences that I have prepared for you as examples, but what is the rule that is going behind all these sentences? Look at the rule. The rule says that if there is a preposition phrase is any structure that is constructed by putting a preposition at the start and then a noun phrase. I mean, to the city, in the country, for the people, on the chair, etc. All these structures are called preposition phrases. Preposition at the start of the structure and then some noun phrase. Relative clause. Relative clause usually starts with some relative pronoun. Relative pronouns are who, which and that. These are most frequently used relative pronouns, although there are also some possessive like whose and objective like whom and who has already been mentioned. Now what actually happens is that subject is present here at the beginning, hidden behind the curtain of preposition phrase. It looks like that the preposition phrase is taking its verb, but this is not the case. The subject is present behind the preposition phrase, it is hidden behind the curtain of preposition phrase, and this must agree with the verb, not preposition phrase itself. I have stated very clearly that a preposition phrase usually is constructed by putting some preposition like on the way. This is a preposition phrase. It seems so that this word way should take its verb, but this is not the case, because any word that is present before this word on will take its own verb. People on the way are, and a boy on the way is. This is the important point that I'm going to emphasize in this lecture. That is why I have kept this lecture very short. There is only one rule and there are some exceptions that I'm going to present before you in this lecture. Now come to the relative clause. Relative clause, I have told you that if subject is present behind a relative clause, it will take its verb. The verb will be singular or plural. It is decided by the subject that is present behind the curtain of a relative clause. And this relative clause is a structure that starts with who, which, or that. These are most frequently used relative pronouns. There is also a very important difference between these two curtains, preposition phrase and relative clause. These two are actually curtains. But this preposition phrase is a phrase and relative clause. It is a clause, phrase and clause. There is a difference between phrase and clause. Clause usually has its own verb. Phrase does not have its own verb. And this difference will be emphasized. It will be inculcated more clearly in the lecture series that I plan to start very soon. That series will be termed as theoretical grammar. Now here we are specifically talking about the usage, and this is not the places, we do not have any space and time. for these things, phrase and clause, because these things are related to structure. We are talking about usage and rules. Now let's summarize the point. Preposition phrases and relative clauses are just modifiers. These are called modifiers. These are just modifying the subject, what the subject is, telling us something more about that subject. The subject itself does not change with that modification. Its singularity and plurality does not change. If it is singular, it will remain singular regardless of whether preposition phrase or relative clause contains some syntactic components, some structures that are plural. And now return to the examples once more and analyze them one by one. Now, one of the most important reasons, coming back to the rules, I'm going to tell you a very important trick. The trick is that you will put a bracket immediately as soon as you come across the first preposition at the start of the sentence. For example, people on the way, the boy on the chair, prisoners in the jail, in, on, and on in these sentences will be separated. Coming back to the example is one of the most important reasons. I'm saying that you must insert a bracket right before the first preposition that you come across in the sentence. For example, where is the first preposition? Of. Now insert a bracket right before this preposition here, but this bracket will be inserted only in your mind, just to understand the concept. And this bracket, the range of this bracket, the sphere of this bracket will continue to the verb. The bracket will be closed when the verb is encountered in the sentence. One of the most important reasons of failure. Now up to this point we do not have any verb. The verb is are. So the bracket will be ended here. Now all this structure is a preposition phrase. Is a very complex preposition phrase that has another preposition phrase within it. For example, of the most important reasons. This is one preposition phrase. Of failure, this is just another preposition phrase. But it does not matter to us. We have invented a very important trick for ourselves. The trick is that we shall insert a bracket as soon as we encounter a preposition in the beginning of a sentence. Now, all the components, all the words present inside the bracket do not matter as far as the subject and verb agreement is concerned. Now look whether the sentence is grammatical and acceptable or not. One are fear. No, it does not convey any sense, but one is fear. Rephrase the sentence. Of the most important reasons of failure, comma, one is fear. Yeah, one or fear. What will be the right option? Of course, it is one is fear. So the sentence is incorrect. And this incorrectness or unacceptability arises from the rules of subject-verb agreement, and specifically from the point that we have stated today. The subject was hidden behind the curtain of preposition phrase, and we have separated it successfully, and it becomes one is fear. The sentence is one of the most important reasons of failure is fear. Recast the sentence. Of the most important reasons of failure, comma, one is fear. So this is actually the concept that I am going to emphasize in this lecture, and you see it is a very important point. Now wheels on the bus. Now apply the same trick, because the curtain again consists of a preposition phrase. That preposition phrase starts from on. Where is on? Wheels on the bus. Now I said that bracket will continue up to the point where you encounter some verb. So verb is here, goes. So the bracket ends here. Now read it again and decide whether the remaining part is correct or incorrect. Wheels goes round and round. Wheels. This subject is plural, but the verb is singular. This concept was presented in the previous lecture, but I also revised it. I repeated the point in the start of this present lecture, that the addition of s or es with the verb makes the verb plural, singular. The s or es addition with the verb makes the verb singular. Now the verb is singular, but the subject is plural, because anything inside that bracket, preposition phrase, does not matter as far as the subject and verb agreement is concerned. This is subject, this is verb. Subject is plural, but the verb is singular. So we will have to remove this es part of the verb so that the sentence becomes correct. Right? It is not goes, it is go. Wheels on the bus go round and round. And if you have listened to this rhyme, you automatically know that wheels on the bus go round and round. This is the correct structure and not goes round and round. The next sentence presents another curtain. We have studied very clearly in the rule that we studied just now that there are two kinds of curtains: preposition phrase and relative clause. These two are types of curtain that we are talking about today. Preposition phrase, first two examples pertained to this rule, preposition phrase, and now relative clause will come into action. Let's see. A man who digs pit for others. Another trick is to be devised and invented here. Wherever, if you come across a word who or which or that, not at the beginning of the sentence but at second, third or fourth position of the sentence, right here it is at the third position. It is 1, 2 and 3. So what will we do? We will do the same thing that we have done with the preposition phrase. We will put a bracket right before the word who, which or that. It is who in this case. And now our break will be applied not at the first verb but the second verb, because the most probably I have told you that clause contains its own verb. So do not apply the same thing that I have told you in the case of preposition phrase. In the case of preposition phrase, we shall close the bracket as soon as we come across the first verb. But in the case of relative clause, we do not end the bracket at the very first verb that we come across, and rather at the second verb, most probably. Now digs is a verb, but this verb is contained within the clause that we are talking about. This clause itself is a curtain. So who digs a pit for others? Now here the clause is going to end. Others. What was the first verb? Digs. So I told you that the bracket will end in the case of relative clause before the second verb that we come across. Second verb is fall. Fall is the second verb. Now read the sentence please by eliminating the structure that is present within the brackets. A man fall into it himself. No, it is ungrammatical, unacceptable. Why? Because our subject, a man, is singular, but the verb fall does not have the singularity indicator that it must have. S. A man falls into it himself. The person who sets trap for others is himself trapped into the net, into the trap. Okay, a man falls into it himself. Why? Because who digs a pit for others was just a modifier. It was adding some more information about the man. It does not have anything to do with the verb itself, the falls, this verb. Okay, many of the prisoners, again, preposition phrase is there. Many of the prisoners, put a bracket here, and end it as soon as we come across a verb. So are is a verb. Many of the prisoners are complaining about inhuman treatment. Is the sentence correct or incorrect? many are complaining, it seems the sentence is purely grammatical, acceptable. It does not have any violation of subject-verb agreement rule or any other rule of grammar. So this sentence is correct. There's no doubt about it. Now there are some other structures that look like modifiers, but they are in fact appositive structures. The structures that are additional information, so additional that even if it is eliminated, the sentence will remain grammatical. Look at the sentence. Sir Richard Colley, a baronet, an alderman, and many other things, was pleased when he read the letter from his son living at a boarding school. Now proximity rule may try to confuse us that the verb here was must agree with things, but this is not the case, because although there is no preposition phrase, no relative clause. This is what I'm going to tell you here. This is another thing apart from preposition phrase, apart from relative clause. This is an appositive structure. We are talking about Sir Richard Colley, a baronet, alderman, and many other things. Now this structure is an additional a piece of additional information for Sir Richard Colley. This is subject. Now Sir Richard Colley was or were. Now it seems that things were. The sentence seemed to be incorrect, but this sentence is purely grammatical and acceptable. It is correct because this was agrees with Sir Richard Colley, not with things or any other thing, any other structure in the sentence. Why is it so? It is so because even if the structure in this bracket is eliminated, right? If we say Sir Richard Colley was pleased when he read the letter from his son living at a boarding school, the sentence remains grammatical and it conveys sense. There is no harm to the sentence that is going to be implied by the sentence. So this structure that is enclosed in the brackets was optional, additional, superfluous. Superfluous means even if it is present or absent, does not matter. This is a positive structure. The space program that, now relative clause is there. Very apparently, who, which, or that. I told you in the rule, who, which, and that, all three words are relative pronouns. So we shall put a bracket here. That underwent. Underwent is a verb, but we have learnt that in the case of a relative clause, we do not end the bracket at the first verb that we come across, rather at the second verb, before the second verb. Underwent an unexpected break due to red tape and other bureaucratic measures. Is, now bracket will end here. The space program is now being relaunched with a renewed spirit. Is the sentence correct? Yes, the sentence is correct. Why is it correct? Because we were talking about space program. The head word is program itself. Even the addition of space does not confuse us. But what really confuses us is the word measures. Measures are? No. Measures is. Why? Because this measures is present within the relative clause that was started by this word that. The space program is now being relaunched with renewed spirit. Now one may ask, which space program? So the answer will be that space program that underwent an unexpected break due to the red tape and other bureaucratic measures. This is the whole sentence. A person whose job, I told you that although there are three most famous relative pronouns, who, which, and that, but there is also a possessive member of this clause. Now again put a bracket here. Whose. A person whose job involves calculating insurance risks and payments for insurance companies by studying how frequently fires, accidents, death, etc. happen are called. So a person are called? No, a person is called. So the sentence was incorrect. A person whose job involves calculating insurance risks and payments for insurance companies by studying how frequently fires, accidents, death, etc. happen are called, of course, is called. Now here you might be wondering that we have crossed two verbs, but we were supposed to cross only one, and we were supposed to put the bracket right before the second one, but we have crossed two verbs. How? Involves, here the first verb that we crossed, and happen, but actually this structure is very complex. How? Whose job involves calculating insurance risks, whose job involves what? One, calculating insurance risks, and what? Payment for insurance companies. How? By studying what? Now this structure, which structure? Studying what? How to happen. This is the object of the verb, this gerund, studying. So it is a very complex structure. We should not go into the details of this structure, but the point is that a person is called an actuary. This is the most important thing for us here. The financial problems here, which, again put a bracket here, who, which and that. We have recognized the culprit, we have recognized the curtain that is going to be put before our eyes by this word, which some of the company's branches have been facing. This is the first verb that we are crossing, have been facing. Over the last years, are mainly. Now a bracket should be put here. The financial problems are, is mainly due to increased foreign competition. Of course are, because we are talking about problems. Which problems? Which some of the company's branches have been facing over the last year. It is a very simple sentence. There is no ambiguity about this sentence. The ninth sentence and the last sentence in this series, not in this lecture series, but in clarifying the point that we have put forward before ourselves. People in every country of the European Union like to be individualists rather than collectivists. So there is a preposition phrase starting with the word in. Put a bracket right before the preposition starts. In every country of the European Union, and end that bracket as soon as we come across a verb. Like is a verb. So people like or people likes to be individualists rather than collectivists. It seems that the verb that is stated here itself is correct. But the proximity rule, we might have been facing the problem that European Union, it is pronounced both ways. This is an organization of countries that are situated in Europe continent. European Union, it is an organization. It is one thing. It likes or it like. Now, if a verb had to agree with this thing, we would definitely have put likes. But it is not the case, because this European Union is a part of the preposition phrase and it is inside the bracket, so it does not matter to us, and it does not matter to the agreement rule as well. And now come to some exceptions. A language, whether it is English or any other language on the planet, is never a straightforward thing. All the rules present in any language have some exceptions. So there are some exceptions. Look at the sentences that are present before you. First category of exceptions consists of fractions. Fractions means part of something, portion of something, although portion is included in some other category. Fractions. Now here the rule says that we should put a bracket here and end the bracket as soon as we come across a verb are. End the bracket before it, and the sentence the verb will agree with the subject. But this is not the case here. Keep in mind, this is not the case here. Here The verb will agree if you have any fractions, portion, or percentage at the slot of the subject. The sentence has the verb that agrees with the nearest thing. Here, the verb must agree with students, not 2/3, because 2/3 is a fraction. It is unknown whether this fraction is of some countable noun or uncountable noun. Here, this fraction is of something that is countable. Students are countable. But in the very next sentence, the same fraction is of something that is uncountable here. Pizza. There is one pizza before you and you have made 3 parts of it. 2 parts have been eaten. And this is some part of that same one pizza, that part has been eaten. Okay, look at the first sentence before going on to the next one. 2/3 of 2/3, not 2/3. 2/3 of the students are absent today. Yes, the sentence is correct because we are talking about students who are uncountable. But this thing, pizza, is something eatable and there is only one of it. So we are talking about some part of it. So 2/3, this part of the pizza has been eaten. This is correct. But according to our first stated rule, this was not the case. The verb did not have to agree with the nearest one. But here the verb agrees with the nearest part. The same is the case with proportions. Although fractions and proportions are not much different, but there is a very minute difference. For example, half and quarter are usually called portions. So half of the players, half of what? Half of something that is countable, half of something that is uncountable, half of something that is countable. So players have. The sentence is correct. But in the sentence number 13, half of the screenplay or drama. Now this is singular, so we have to make the verb agree with the screenplay. And the last thing is percentage. 10% of what? 10% of the infected patients. Now patient is the main thing that must take its verb have. Sentence is correct. 90% of the astronomical research is something that is uncountable here. So it must be regarded as singular subject. Validates, substantiates, proves. Right, correct, because research is uncountable, treated as singular as far as the subject and verb agreement is concerned. So this was the lecture, and I again offer you my help regarding grammatical concepts. If you find any ambiguity, any trouble, any problem in the concepts that I am presenting here, that I am trying to make you understand, you can comment, you can contact me, you can comment in the comment section, and you can ask me the question. And I'm also going to plan. I'm also planning to start a new lecture series that will be termed as queries, questions. Only questions will be answered in that lecture series. So feel free to ask anything about the concepts that are presented here. So goodbye till the next lecture.